Hey everyone, welcome back to Kubrick Corner with me, Sean Wilson. I'm joined again by erstwhile journalist and good friend Sven at Bristol's glorious
Howdy.
Watershed Cinema. So thanks Sven, thanks so much for
you're
getting the
welcome,
screening ready again.
Yeah, cool.
And we're here to talk about the LFF 2017 London Film Festival. So if I was to ask you, what are your thoughts on this year's festival, how it measured up to last year's festival, what in terms of the quality of the things you saw, what would you say?
It is really difficult to compare festivals because I think last year at the festival you had films like Moonlight, you had La La Land, you had Manchester by the Sea,
Yeah.
and I don't really know if the film festival had such a film this year that had such an impact. Although I've seen a lot of really amazing films. But yeah, I wonder how these films are going to play out for audiences over the next 6 months up to a year, or even with the Oscars.
Yeah, because you're right, aren't you? Because last year La La Land caused such an extraordinary sensation. I remember going to the public screening of that and everyone came out skipping and smiling and laughing. And yeah, Moonlight again caused a real frisson.
And I think there's only maybe like one film where I came out that sort of had the same impact. Like a film, I came out and I really felt the audience buzzing, and it was The Shape of Water.
Right,
Maybe
yeah.
you want to tell something about that film?
Yeah, so Shape of Water, for those who haven't seen it, is obviously Guillermo del Toro's new film set in 1960s Cold War America, which for me, that's what freshens up the whole narrative. This isn't set in a distant, fantastical world. This is set in a very, very recognisable world, which gives it a bit of juice. And it stars Sally Hawkins as the mute janitor who works in this top secret government lab where they've brought in a new asset, which is an amphibious humanoid creature, and she forms a connection with it, and she also gets in the way of what the Michael Shannon's character, who is the overseeing agent, wants to do with the creature. He wants to dissect it and prevent the Russians from getting their hands on it. And then Michael Stuhlbarg's character, who is the scientist who wants to learn more about it. I thought this was my highlight. It's so good. Because Del Toro's past couple of films have left me a bit cold. Crimson Peak left me cold. Pacific Rim left me a bit cold as well. All of the characters in this had such a rich inner life. In addition to it being wonderfully visual, as all of Del Toro's movies are, in addition to it riffing on monster movies like Creature from the Black Lagoon and musicals, I cared about what was happening. I was so invested in it.
Yeah, I think the characters were very, very rich, and because they're all the characters in this film, they're all sort of like battling loneliness, and I think that is portrayed in a very beautiful way. Some are lonely, like really literally, as Sally Hawkins' character, she's a mute, she's not able to express herself. Neither is like the man. He can't express himself.
Doug Jones' character,
but then still, they actually do through their gestures, and I think that is something that is really, really beautiful. And although it's a completely different film than La La Land, I do think a thing that both films have in common, they're really both in love with the language of cinema and cinema's history. So yeah, Del Toro, he takes the monster feature, he takes 1950s musicals, but he really gives it its own modern spin, which I really liked.
Well, one thing I thought about it, which I thought was interesting, and this came out as I was watching it, was that it's basically a movie about role playing, isn't it? It's about people playing roles, so how people are defined. So Sally Hawkins is the mute woman who everyone overlooks and who has a very, very important role to play in the story in terms of connecting with this monster. Octavia Spencer, the brilliant Octavia Spencer, is the black janitor who is denigrated as the help, and she has a very powerful voice of her own. Michael Shannon is, of course, is the very brutish, ruthless agent who's brilliantly despicable and horrible, yet he has a very complex home life as well, and he craves like a Cadillac, he craves the American dream and everything. And Michael Stuhlbarg's character has a whole other side, which we won't ruin because it would constitute a spoiler. All of these characters are so good, but I've got to give a shout out to Richard Jenkins, who is wonderful, and he's for me, he's the reason why this is probably Del Toro's funniest film. I mean, funnier than the Hellboy movies. It's funny.
Yeah, it's so warm-hearted, and as we said before, it's with so much love to the character, and everything in this film really works like clockwork, and it flows very organically, I think.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't really feel very constructed. And it's very whimsy, like a lot of people might say, like, oh, it's something like a Jean-Pierre Jeunet film, especially something like Délicatesse, like his earlier films. But I think what sets this apart is that there's so much heart to the whimsy. And that is really extraordinary. So yeah, that's a film that I definitely recommend. I think it's scheduled to be released here in the UK in February.
February, I think.
So yeah,
February 16th,
definitely seek that out.
Yeah.
And I'm also curious to see how that's going to play in the Oscar season.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed. Yeah, if it's out in the US at the end of this year, at the end of 2017, fingers crossed it'll be in contention for that. I must also give a shout out to The Shape of Water, which is, now I'm going to probably mispronounce the director's name here, Luca Guadagnino, I want to say.
You said Shape of Water, you mean Call Me By Your Name?
I mean Call Me By Your Name, because Shape of Water was so good I've actually said it twice. Yeah, Call Me By Your Name, which is directed by Luca
Guadagnino, yeah.
Guadagnino, okay, right, yeah. Which is adapted from Andre Ackerman's novel about a relationship between a young, bookish teenager and his father's research assistant in 1980s Italy, which is just one of those classic remembered youth movies. I think it will go down as one of those quintessential movies where it's like you're looking back through the haze of memory, and it's so beautifully filmed and it's so sensitively acted and so acutely aware of the pain and the joy that comes with romance and with finding true love, and the way that the initial euphoria gives way to that maturity and that coming of age sense of anguish. And Timothée Chalamet as the central character Elio, my goodness me, I knew I'd seen him in something before. He was in Interstellar, but blimey, I mean, in this he's incredible. And Armie Hammer as well. Finally Armie Hammer has found a decent role to show off his talents. He was in Free Fire earlier this year. He was brilliant in that, but just a perfectly acted, perfectly directed, perfectly casted film. Did you?
No,
like it as well?
I haven't seen it, but from what I heard is that Timothée Chalamet is basically like one of the breakout stars of 2017.
Yeah.
Because next he will be seen in the Greta Gerwig film Lady Bird, which was a surprise
Oh,
film
Saoirse
this
Ronan.
year.
No.
Timothée Chalamet.
Oh,
He's
okay.
in Lady
right.
Bird.
Yeah.
And he will be in the new Woody Allen that will come out next year. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to see Call Me By Your Name, which comes out here in the UK on the 27th of October.
Yes.
So at least we don't have to wait too long for that film. I want to say something about the winner of this year's London Film Festival, and that was the film Loveless by the filmmaker Andrei Zhyagintsev. Zhyagintsev, he won the London Film Festival, I think, 3 years ago with Leviathan.
Oh,
as well.
extraordinary
So
film.
now he was back, and he doesn't. He's not going to change his recipe. He does what he does well. He shows sort of like Russian corruption or like a very rotten core of Russian society, but he tells that story through the prism of a handful of people. And here in this film, like those people as a couple who have fallen out. It's a really bitter relationship between two people. They both have partners on the side. They don't get on at all, but they're still trying to sell their house. They're still going through like a lot of admin work that comes with a divorce. But then to make things worse, their son, their 10-year-old son, just disappears. And that is not.
That just completes it.
That is not a spoiler, because that is basically that happens in the first 10 minutes, and sort of like through that fact, through what happened, Zhyagintsev really examines his characters and a society and the society's response to those characters and that disappearance. And I think it's not for everyone. I watched this on a Friday night. It's not a film that says Friday night.
What time on a Friday night?
Yeah, it was about like 9 o'clock. I had a couple of drinks, but I like all of a sudden that film really sobered me up. No, I think it's an astounding piece of work. And I think he's definitely one of like international cinema's greatest filmmakers. And this prize really sort of like confirmed his talent.
Well, Leviathan was an incredible socio-political study, a personal story, yet also the story of, like, as you say, about this film, wider Russian society. So it sounds like this is very much in his wheelhouse. Like
apparently this film, Zhyagintsev really wanted to work with Ingmar Bergman, and when Bergman was still alive. And he sort of like started to remake Scenes of a Marriage from Bergman, and he couldn't really get it to work, and then he sort of retooled it to the film that is now Loveless.
Fantastic.
Which I think is an interesting fact of trivia.
So is that out this year or next year?
Next year will also be February 2018 here in the UK.
So February 2018 in this country is shaping up to be a really extraordinary month for movies next year. It sounds absolutely incredible. Well, fantastic, yeah. Well, I wanted to give a shout out to Lucky, the Harry Dean Stanton's penultimate film, not his final film. He's got another one coming out. Harry Dean Stanton obviously died in September, and it was an enormous loss to Hollywood because he was one of the most extraordinary character actors, just in terms of the sheer longevity of his career, which goes back about 50 or 60 years, if not longer. such an incredibly weathered face is seen in the likes of Alien and Twin Peaks and so on. This basically casts him as one of the last old-time cowboys, like ambling through his life in this dusty, windswept American desert town. He's an old guy who is held in some sort of affectionate regard in his local community. He smokes multiple cigarettes a day, and yet death seems quite reluctant to catch up with him. Although, in spite of at one moment he suffers a fall, the doctor, played by Ed Begley Jr., doesn't actually know what's wrong with him. He's like, you should be a dead man walking now, and you're not. And so it's about the title character who he plays is called Lucky, hence the title. He is a devout atheist. He is contemplating the sum total of his life. It's through his interactions with the locals. And it's directed by John Carroll Lynch, who is an actor who I admire very, very much. And it's got a lovely sort of lyrical Jim Jarmusch-esque, like ambling quality to it. It's nothing demonstrative about it. I don't know. Did you see this?
No, I haven't seen it. But what's interesting and also a bit unfortunate is that probably the film gets this whole new character after Dean Stanton's passing. All of a sudden, it becomes this more like a meditation or rumination of life and the passing of life, and it gets a new sort of gravitas to it. Yeah. From the sound of it, I have not seen the film, but I will definitely catch up with it whenever it comes out here.
I mean, like, Dean Stanton's face is the story. I mean, it's like a road map of Hollywood history. You just look at it and you can get lost in it. It's absolutely wonderful. I don't think it's secured UK distribution yet, as far as I know. But hopefully it will be coming out either at the end of this year or into the start of next year.
Yeah, fingers crossed for that one.
Yeah, it's really worth seeing, yeah.
Yeah, another film that is going to come out early next year, which was one of my favourites of the film festival, was Lean on Pete, which is a new film by Andrew Hay, a British filmmaker who sort of bursted on the scene with Weekend and Looking. And then, a couple of years ago, he made 45 Years.
Both extraordinary films.
He's quite a youngish filmmaker, but he had so much insight in a relationship of older people with 45 Years, and I thought that was a phenomenal film. And with this film, he goes to America. He makes an American film, and it's sort of like a road movie, an odyssey through like the American heartland. And sometimes I think maybe it takes like a foreign filmmaker to tell something really truthful like America, because I really had to think about Andrea Arnold's American Honey.
Or Hell or High Water.
Or Hell or High Water is once again David Mackenzie. He's a Scottish filmmaker. But with Lean on Pete, he tells the story of this young guy called Charlie, an extraordinary performance by Charlie Plummer, who is sort of like from a poor background. His parents aren't really there for him. And he starts to work as an assistant of a horse trainer played by Steve Buscemi. And from then on, I don't want to tell much more, but it's a really beautiful lyrical piece about America, about growing up, about finding yourself. I thought that was very, very good, and it's a film that's going to stay with me for a very long time.
Fantastic, and that's out when?
I think it's scheduled for January. But.
Okay, fantastic, yeah, brilliant. Well, I suppose one final film that we both want to talk about is a certain Vince Vaughn movie.
Yeah, this is a film for fans of the breakup and the internship.
Because we both saw this one.
No, it's not really a film for the fans of this romantic comedies.
It's for people who want to smash their DVDs of the breakup underfoot. Really, it was Brawl in Cell Block 99, which, crikey.
I've seen a lot of really brutal, violent films in my life, as we both have, and I think it's probably one of the most violent films I've ever seen.
I think the best way I can describe it, this is how I've described it to people. If you imagine the head stompy scene from Drive, basically expand that to every act of violence in this film. That's the sort of level that people are going to get in this. But it really bamboozled me. I still don't really know what to make of it as a movie, because it starts off as one thing, which is basically Vince Vaughn's character. There's a drug bust that goes wrong. He goes to prison. While he's in prison, the Mexican drug dealers that he ended up doing over them threaten his wife and his unborn child. And you think, okay, so it's going to be like about him being put through the prison system. And then all of a sudden, he very violently breaks a prison officer's arm because he has to be infiltrate solitary confinement to apparently kill this guy that the gangsters wanted to kill.
I don't think you have to tell a lot more. But yeah, basically, it is like two films in one film. It's as you said. And when you watch the trailer, you have like not really an idea.
Exactly.
You think it's sort of like a prison drama.
Yeah.
But then the film can obviously wants to shy away from what kind of film it actually is. It's a film I think that really exclusively caters for like the midnight crowd.
Yes.
It's a film you have to see with a big audience. I think I'm still just as you. I'm still on the fence about it. I think on one hand it's nihilistic trash. There's nothing really more to it. But then I would be lying if I would say that I didn't have fun with it. Whilst I was watching it, I kind of like enjoyed it. But I don't know if it's a film that I want to watch again. I don't know if it's a film that I wholeheartedly would recommend to people.
Yeah.
It's not a film you want to watch on DVD at home.
Well, we should say it's directed by S. Craig Zahler, who directed Bone Tomahawk, which was a terrific movie, which similarly had explosions of violence in, although not as much as this one. And I have to say, Vince Vaughn is clearly more committed to this character than he has been in any movie in the last 10 years. I found his character quite unbelievable in as much as he just basically stomped his way through every single scene. I was like, there isn't really emotion, it doesn't really give him much emotional nuance to work with, which is a bit of a shame. I think there was missed potential there. But in terms of him having a physically commanding presence on screen, that's more than can be said for any Vince Vaughn movie in the last decade.
Because the thing is, he's quite a tall presence. And in this film, like, his presence is basically like he does the acting.
Yeah.
Because he's also going to be in the director's next film with Mel Gibson. He's teaming up and they're going to play like redneck right-wing racist cops.
Crikey.
So yeah, both Mel Gibson and Vince Vaughn are sort of known as like for their right-wing visions in Hollywood. So it's going to be interesting how the director's going to play with that. That's for the next film that will probably come out next year.
Fantastic.
Maybe I want to mention one more film before we wrap up, and that is also a film we both watched. That's Last Flag Flying.
Yes.
By Richard Linklater. I think Richard Linklater, he's very good in doing these very sort of like understated character studies, in which the plot sort of like meanders.
Yes.
There's not really that much of a plot. It's more like three characters just chatting and hanging out. It's a spiritual sequel to How Ashby is the Last Detail, and it's about three war veterans who are forced to come together, and they're sort of like crossing cross country, and throughout their journey, they sort of like find each other off.
And a wonderful chemistry between Steve Carell, Bryan Cranston, and Lawrence Fishburne, who clearly enjoy each other's company, and we can feel Richard Linklater enjoying their chemistry off camera. Got to give a shout out to Bryan Cranston, who does get back to his comedy roots in this with Malcolm in the Middle, because he is a very bolshy, gregarious, bullshitting character who doesn't shut up.
Yeah, he's
the
a
whole
loud man,
movie.
because he's playing the Jack Nicholson character from the Hal Ashby film, and he's sort of like, it's sort of like the same timbre.
Yeah, that anti-authoritarian streak comes through. Yeah, definitely. And Steve Carell, it's probably not right to say he's a revelation, because Steve Carell has done very fine dramatic work before, but he's very reserved and very introverted. And Lawrence Fishburne is similarly impressive, but it's very warm, it's very funny, it's a bit fuzzy. And there is a degree of patriotism in the movie which we wouldn't readily associate with Richard Linklater, although one could say, well, that's because he hasn't really focused on this subject matter necessarily this explicitly in his other films before. So I think it is soft focus, but yeah, you're absolutely right. In terms of making me believe in what's going on, he's funny. There's no better director.
No, I don't think so. And also, you can say like, the plot is not as focused, but I don't really think that was its intention.
No.
But like I really like the company of these three guys in that film. It sent me away out with like a very warm heart.
Yeah. Well, as did the entire LFF this year. Yeah. So I was really glad to meet up with you. I'm really glad to meet up with everyone else. Will you be going back next year?
I think so. Like I don't know what's going to happen to me in the next year. It's still going to be around here in the UK, but we'll see. Yeah. I hope so, because it's a phenomenal festival.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, you heard it here, guys. That was our roundup of LFF 2017. Please do go and check out all of these films that we've mentioned when they go on wide release, because they are fantastic. So I'm Sean Wilson.
I'm Sven De Hondt.
And you've been watching Kubrick Corner. Peace out.
Ciao.